Hello, my name's Billy Scott and I'm a Blue Badge tourist guide in Belfast. Belfast has always been known down through the years as a city of political conflict, but we're going to look for something else, so we are. In Belfast you had the largest rope works in the world, the largest tobacco factory in the world, the largest linen mills in the world and the largest shipyards in the world, Harland and Wolff. And where we're standing now, we're starting at what would have been the entrance to the old walled city of Belfast. So we'll go into it and we'll have a look around and we'll see what we can dig up, what we can find. Okay, let's go. At the turn of the 20th century, Belfast was the third most affluent port in the United Kingdom after Liverpool and London. And to service these industries, you had the banks and the shipping offices and the finance houses, and it would have been this area, the original part of the city, the Cathedral Quarter. And just over here, this is the Merchant Hotel. And it was originally the headquarters of Ulster Bank, opened there in 1860. And if you look up in the roof of it, you see the big wine urns. What those wine urns are, they're representative of an institution's liquid assets. The first governor of the Ulster Bank, he's checking his liquid assets a wee bit too closely. He came out to declare it open, tripped on the top step, dead by the time his head at the bottom step. Now the Merchant Hotel, home to the world's most expensive cocktail. £750 for one drink. A Mai Tai rum-based cocktail. 6 bottles of rum in the world, 5 are in Cuba, and 1's here in Belfast. This is only evidence that there actually was an entry here, and this is where Sugar House Lane was. And in Sugar House Lane you would have found Peggy Barclay's Tavern. And it was in Peggy Barclay's Tavern in 1791 that the Presbyterian minister, the Reverend Drennan, founded the Mumblers Club, the United Irishmen, who rose up against the British in 1798, and there was over 30,000 insurgents killed in that uprising. Henry Joy McCracken, he was the leader of the United Irishmen in the north of Ireland, and after the failed uprising, he was tried in this building across the street here, the assembly rooms, then taken round the corner and executed outside his own front door. And of course his family founded the Belfast Newsletter in 1737, and to this day that is still the longest running English language newspaper in the world. First newspaper in Europe, by the way, that the American Declaration of Independence was published in 1776. Of course 6 of the signatories were Ulstermen. So every time you wake up in the morning with an upset stomach, maybe a bit of a hangover, and you reach for that blue bottle to solve your problems, you can always thank Sir James Murray, who was born just here in the corner of Bridge Street, the inventor of milk of magnesia. Here we are, Pottinger's Entry. People would think of it as the home to the Morning Star, but it's also named after a famous Belfast man, Sir Henry Pottinger. Henry Pottinger went to sea as no more than a child, a midshipman, as about 13 or 14-year-old, and then he ended up a lieutenant in the East India Company, I guess 17-year-old. But Henry Pottinger was also the man who negotiated the ending of the First Opium Wars, and then as a wee surprise for Queen Victoria, he negotiated the lease on Hong Kong for Britain. A Belfast man. Here we are at St Anne's Cathedral, this wonderful cathedral, complete here in 1904. Architecture's Hiberno-Romanesque. Now buried in here is the body of Sir Edward Carson. Now traditionally in a tour around Belfast people will be expecting us to talk about Sir Edward Carson, the Unionist MP for Trinity area in Dublin, how he founded the UVF in 1912. No, we're not talking about that. Sir Edward Carson was also a lawyer, and he happened to be the prosecuting lawyer in his old college chum's libel trials with Marquis of Queensberry when he was jailed for being a homosexual, and that of course was Oscar Wilde. Little engraving on the wall here to Edmund de Wind. And he won the Victoria Cross in World War I, 1918. He was a second lieutenant with the Royal Irish Rifles. But of course Edmund de Wind had actually started the war with the Canadian forces, although he's from here, Northern Ireland. And out of respect to him and in honour of him winning the Victoria Cross, the Canadians named a mountain after him in the Rockies. So there's the De Wind Mountain in the Rockies. So we've left behind St Anne's in Donegal Street and moved further up the street to St Patrick's, and we're still in Donegal Street in North Belfast, and this is St Patrick's Catholic Chapel. The original chapel was actually complete here in 1813, although this one isn't the original. Also in the chapel you will find a triptych, 3 paintings of the Madonna of the Lakes, done by Ireland's leading societal artist of the 19th, 20th century, Sir John Lavery, who was born just round the corner there in North Queen Street. And the model of the Madonna is actually John Lavery's wife, Hazel. She was actually an artist in her own right, so she was an American, and she was a very good friend of Michael Collins. And of course Sir John Lavery, he fought for Britain in World War One. So to reaffirm his Irish identity after the war, he presented the paintings to the chapel. And here we are in North Belfast, still in Clifton Park Avenue. And Clifton Park Avenue runs from the Clifton Road over onto the Crumlin Road. And if we were to talk about presidents, people would immediately think from the Crumlin Road, Mary McAleese, President of Ireland. But just behind us here on Clifton Park Avenue is where Ciam Herzog was born. Belfast is the only city in the world to have provided a High Rabbi and President for Israel. Ciam Herzog was President of Israel from 1983 to 1993, and his father was the High Rabbi. We're in the city centre. We're coming up May Street, and on the right hand side is a blue plaque dedicated to John Boyd Dunlop. John Boyd Dunlop, who is a Scotsman. He lived here in Belfast and he's a vet, and his son was out cycling on his push bike, so he wasn't hard rubber tyres in those days, and he was complaining about having a pain in the posterior. So John Boyd Dunlop realised that if he could fill these tyres with air, it would act as suspension, so it would. So hence he invented the pneumatic tyre, invented in Belfast. And round the corner in Donegal Square East is where Harry Ferguson started to work for his brother. Harry Ferguson was known as the mad mechanic because he built and flew the very first aeroplane in Ireland, and it had the habit of turning upside down, dropping him out of it. And in World War One, the government demanded a 20% increase in agricultural productivity. Until then, tractors had been very clumsy, heavy vehicles, so they hadn't. So Harry invented a plough which attached to the tractor with a 3-point lever, and this revolutionised agriculture in the 20th century. And on Donegal Square West is a statue to Lord Dufferin of Alva. It's my favourite statue in Belfast. Governor General to Canada, Viceroy to India, Ambassador to St Petersburg, Constantinople, Rome and Paris. And the Canadian connection is, we can see on the side here, with the Canadian trapper man with a Springfield rifle on the far side. The Indian connection, a sepoy warrior, rather resplendent in his turban and great cutlass. Here we are in University Street, and this is the main route that Queen Victoria took in 1849 when she came to open Queen's University. And as we drive along here, you'll see on the right hand side the fronts of these houses, but they aren't actually fronts. What they are, these are false fronts that were built on the rears of the houses, because Queen Victoria came along here in the horse and carriage. It would have been terribly in those days to sort of have her eyes assaulted by the sight of somebody's bloomers blowing in the wind on the washing line in the back of the houses. So to save poor Queen Victoria, they built the false fronts on the backs of the houses, so that in 70 years of reign, Queen Victoria visited Belfast for 4 hours, and in those 4 hours, the only time she got off her horse and carriage was to open Queen's. The rest of the time she sat inside it with her nose and mouth covered, because at the time there was a typhoid epidemic in the north of Ireland, so she didn't wish to fall victim to typhoid. Of course, in Belfast we've got Queen's University, Queen's Island, Queen's Road, Queen Street, Upper Queen Street, North Queen Street, Great Victoria Street, Victoria Street, the Albert Clock, the Albert Bridge. And could you imagine just if Queen Victoria had stayed here for the flipping week?